No one cared about two homeless kids until a black man fed them. What happened next was heartwarming. On a cold and lonely street corner, two young children sat huddled together. They were just a few years apart in age, maybe 10 and 12, but they had already lived through hardships that most adults could never imagine. Their clothes were ragged, worn down by the harsh weather, and their faces showed the signs of exhaustion. They had been on the streets for what felt like an eternity, trying to survive each day, each moment. Their names were Lily and Max. Lily, the younger of the two, had big brown eyes that were full of curiosity, but her innocence had been slowly replaced by a sadness that no child should ever have to carry. Max, her older brother, was fiercely protective of her. Even though he was just a little older, he often tried to take on the role of a parent, guiding her through their tough days. Max had learned how to be strong at a young age, and now he had to teach Lily how to be strong, too. They had been abandoned by their parents at a young age. Their family had been torn apart, and life had forced them to learn things no child should know. They had no home to go to, no family to turn to. The streets had become their world. The cold concrete sidewalks, the bustling noise of traffic, the passing faces of strangers, all of it was their reality. It was a life that offered no comfort, no warmth, no love, only the constant fight for survival. The streets were unforgiving. People passed by them every day, their faces fixed ahead, their eyes avoiding the children sitting on the sidewalk. Some didn't even glance their way, others hurried past with their heads down. A few would toss a coin into their tin can, but that was about it. To most people, Lily and Max didn't even exist. They were just part of the scenery, a brief, sad glimpse of the forgotten ones. The ones who didn't matter, they were invisible. Max tried to keep a brave face for Lily, but he was only human. Some days the struggle seemed too much to bear. His stomach growled with hunger, but there was rarely enough to eat. Sometimes they would find scraps of food thrown out in the trash, but even then, it was never enough to fill the emptiness inside. Lily, too, was always hungry. Her small body couldn't handle the lack of food, but she still smiled for Max. She tried to stay strong, but it was hard when the world seemed to have forgotten about them. The nights were the hardest. As the sun set and the streetlights flickered to life, the cold began to seep into their bones. They had no blanket to keep warm, no roof to shelter them. They would curl up together, using each other's warmth as best they could, and try to fall asleep amidst the noise and chaos of the city. But sleep was never truly restful. Every sound, every footstep, every car horn kept them on edge. They never knew if someone would stop and hurt them, or if a kind soul might finally take pity and offer them a place to stay. It was a lonely existence, but they had each other. And for that, Max was thankful. He would tell Lily stories to help her forget the pain. Sometimes he would make up stories about a world where they had a home, where they could be safe and happy. He would describe a house with a warm fireplace, a soft bed, and a kitchen full of food. He would talk about a mother who cared for them and a father who would protect them. It was the kind of life Max dreamed of, even though he knew it might never happen. Lily listened intently, hanging on to every word he said. For her, Max's stories were a momentary escape from their harsh reality. She liked to imagine that one day, someone would come for them, someone who would care, someone who would love them. She didn't understand why no one helped them, why no one seemed to care about two kids living on the streets. But she held on to the hope that one day someone would. The days passed in a blur. Each one was a repeat of the last. Max and Lily spent their time walking the streets, looking for food, looking for something to do, trying to avoid the dangers that came with living on the streets. They avoided the drug dealers who hung around the corners, the angry people who shouted at them, and the men who gave them uncomfortable looks. They were always alert, always ready to move if they needed to. The streets weren't just their home, they were their battleground. Despite it all, they kept moving forward. Every morning they would wake up to the same bleak world, but they found ways to make it through. They would help each other when they could, sharing what little they had. On rare occasions, a kind stranger would offer them a small meal or a few coins. They didn't expect much, but each act of kindness, no matter how small, meant the world to them. But most days, kindness was hard to come by. Max was beginning to lose hope. He wasn't sure how much longer they could keep going like this. He wanted more for Lily, wanted to give her the childhood she deserved. He couldn't stand the thought of her growing up like this, on the streets, abandoned by the world. He dreamt of a different life, one where they weren't invisible, one where they weren't forgotten. As they sat on the street corner, shivering from the cold, Max couldn't help but wonder if anyone would ever care, if anyone would ever notice them. The street was crowded with people going about their lives, rushing to their destinations, too busy to even spare a glance at the two homeless kids sitting on the sidewalk. People were in their own worlds, their own struggles, their own lives to worry about. No one had time to stop and help. No one had time to care. But then something unexpected happened. A man who was passing by with a grocery bag in his hand noticed them. Unlike everyone else, he didn't just walk by. He stopped. He looked down at the two kids sitting there, their eyes tired, their clothes ragged. For a moment, he just stared. It was as if he could see them, really see them for the first time. The man was black, dressed in a simple jacket and jeans. He had a kind face with deep, thoughtful eyes. He didn't look rich, but he looked like someone who understood hardship. He didn't judge them. He didn't turn away. Instead, he approached them and knelt down. "Hey there," he said gently, his voice warm and inviting. "Are you hungry?" Max and Lily both looked up at him in surprise. They weren't used to people stopping to talk to them. The man smiled, and without waiting for a response, he took out a sandwich from his bag and handed it to them. "Here," he said, "I've got some food for you. You look like you could use a meal." For the first time in a long time, Max and Lily felt something other than hunger, something like hope. It was a small act, but it was the kind of kindness they had long forgotten. The man didn't look at them with pity. He didn't treat them like they were invisible. He just saw two kids who needed help, and he gave it. As they ate the food, Max and Lily couldn't help but feel something shift inside of them. This man had stopped. This man had cared. And in that moment, the world felt a little bit kinder. The warmth from the sandwich was like nothing Max and Lily had felt in what seemed like forever. For a moment, they just sat there, savoring each bite, tasting the food as if it were the best thing they had ever eaten. They were so used to barely having enough to eat that they didn't take anything for granted. The simple pleasure of eating a meal was something they had almost forgotten. Max glanced up at the man who had given them the food. He wasn't sure what to say at first. People didn't often stop to talk to them, let alone offer them food. But this man was different. He didn't look like anyone else they had encountered on the streets. His face was kind, his eyes warm and understanding, as if he saw them for who they really were, not just two kids lost in a world that had forgotten them. Lily, still chewing, looked up at him with wide eyes. She had always been shy around strangers, but something about this man made her feel safe. She felt like he was someone who cared, someone who wasn't just passing through the streets, ignoring the ones who were invisible to everyone else. Max finally spoke, breaking the silence. "Thank you," he said, his voice quiet but full of genuine gratitude. We haven't eaten like this in a long time." The man nodded, smiling softly. "I can imagine," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I've been through some tough times myself. But it's the little things that help, right?" Max looked at him, trying to figure out what kind of person he was. There was something familiar about him, something in the way he spoke, like he understood struggle, like he had lived through difficult moments in his life too. "Do you need anything else?" the man asked. "A place to stay, maybe, or just someone to talk to?" Max hesitated. He was used to taking care of Lily, and asking for help wasn't something he had ever done. But in that moment, he realized that maybe it was okay to let someone else help for once. Maybe this stranger wasn't just offering food. Maybe he was offering something else, something that had been missing from their lives for so long: kindness. "We don't have anywhere to go," Max said slowly, his eyes on the ground. "We just keep moving, we try to stay safe." The man nodded, his face thoughtful. "I understand," he said. "Life can be tough sometimes, but that doesn't mean you have to go through it alone. There are people out there who care, even when it doesn't seem like it." Max felt a flicker of hope stir in his chest, but he wasn't sure if he believed it. People had passed them by their whole lives. They had asked for help before, but it had never come. The world didn't care about kids like them, or so he thought. The man continued, "I'm here for you if you need something. I can't fix everything, but I can listen. Sometimes that's all you need." Lily, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, looked up at the man and asked, "Why are you helping us? You don't even know us." The man smiled again, a gentle, reassuring smile. "Because I've been there," he said simply. "I know what it's like to feel like no one cares, but I also know that the world can be a better place when people help each other. It's just about doing what you can when you can." His words lingered in the air, filling the space between them. For the first time in a long while, Max felt like someone was seeing them for who they were, not as a burden, not as people to avoid, but as two kids who deserved more than the streets. "You're a good person," Max said quietly, his voice full of sincerity. "Not many people would stop and do what you did." The man shrugged, not looking for praise. "It's just what people should do for each other. We all have our struggles, but we can make it easier for someone else, even if it's just a little bit." "It doesn't take much to make a difference." Max thought about those words for a moment. "Maybe," he said, not entirely sure, "but sometimes it feels like nothing will ever change, like we're stuck." The man's smile softened. "I know how that feels. But trust me, it does get better. You just have to keep going, keep moving forward, even when it feels hard." Max wasn't sure if he fully believed the man, but something in his tone gave him a sense of calm. The kind of calm that made him think maybe things could be different. Maybe they could find a way out of this life. Maybe there was still a chance for them to have a better future. "You don't have to do it alone," the man added, as if reading Max's thoughts. "If you ever need food or just someone to talk to, I'll be around. I'll always be happy to help." Lily's eyes sparkled with a mixture of hope and curiosity. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice small but eager. "Of course," the man replied, crouching down to their level. "I'm not going anywhere, and I'll be here for you as long as you need me." Max couldn't believe it. Someone actually cared. It was hard for him to wrap his head around it, but the warmth from the man's words filled him with something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The man stood up, adjusting the bag he carried. "Take care of each other," he said. "I'm heading out now, but I'll be back, I promise." With that, the man turned and walked away, leaving Max and Lily in stunned silence. They watched him disappear into the crowd, the hustle and bustle of the city swallowing him up, as if he had never been there at all. But Max knew he had been there. He knew that the man's kindness was real. And for the first time in a long time, Max didn't feel so alone. Max looked down at Lily, who was still holding her half of the sandwich, her eyes wide with wonder. "Did that really just happen?" she asked softly, as if not believing it herself. Max smiled, the weight in his chest feeling a little lighter. "I think so," he said, his voice filled with hope. "I think it did." The world still felt cold and harsh, but in that moment Max realized that maybe, just maybe, there were people out there who cared. Maybe one small act of kindness could be the start of something bigger. Maybe, just maybe, their lives could change for the better. And as they finished the last bites of their sandwich, Max knew one thing for sure. Things were about to be different. They weren't invisible anymore. The next few days after the encounter with the man felt different for Max and Lily. For the first time in a long while, they felt like something had shifted. It wasn't just the food they had received that day. It was the kindness. The kindness of a stranger who had seen them for who they really were, and not just as another pair of homeless kids on the streets. Max couldn't stop thinking about the man. He kept telling himself that maybe, just maybe, life could be better. He had been so focused on surviving, on getting through each day, that he hadn't even considered the possibility that there might be people who cared. But now he felt like there was a glimmer of hope, something that hadn't existed in their lives for a long time. Maybe it was the warmth in the man's eyes, the way he spoke with such understanding, or maybe it was the way he promised to be there whenever they needed him. Max wasn't sure what would happen next, but the thought that someone wanted to help them gave him the strength to keep moving forward. It gave him the courage to start thinking about the future, not just the present, and that was something new. Lily, too, was feeling a sense of calm she hadn't felt before. The world had always seemed so big and scary to her. She had seen people ignore them, avoid looking at them, and treat them as if they didn't matter. But the man's kindness had made her feel like she did matter. Like she and Max weren't just two kids lost in the world, but that they were seen, that someone cared. For the next few days, they stayed on the same street corner. It was the only place they knew, and despite how cold and unwelcoming it was, it felt like home. They went through their usual routine. Max would try to find scraps of food, and Lily would sit by the corner, drawing pictures in the dirt to pass the time. But this time, there was a new sense of purpose in their actions, something they hadn't felt before. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about moving forward, about hoping for something more. Then one morning, as Max and Lily sat together, waiting for the day to start, they saw the man again. He was walking toward them, his usual warm smile on his face. Max's heart skipped a beat. It was the same man, the one who had given them food and shared his words of kindness. And this time, he wasn't just passing by. He stopped in front of them, pausing for a moment before speaking. "Hey there," he said, looking down at them with a kind smile. "How are you two doing today?" Max blinked in surprise. It was such a simple question, but it meant so much. People didn't usually ask how they were doing. They didn't care, but this man, he did. It was like he actually wanted to know. "We're okay," Max replied, his voice a little more hopeful than usual. "Just trying to make it through the day." The man nodded as if he understood. "I know it's tough," he said gently, "but you're not alone in this. I told you before, I'm here to help whenever you need it. How about we go get something to eat together today? I know a place around the corner where we can sit and have a nice meal." Max felt a little overwhelmed. It wasn't that he didn't want to eat with the man. It was just that he hadn't ever had anyone offer to take him somewhere like that before. To sit down in a restaurant, to have a meal that wasn't just a piece of bread or a scrap of something someone threw away. It felt almost unreal. "We don't want to be a bother," Max said, his voice unsure. "We don't really have any money," the man waved off his concern. "Don't worry about that, it's on me. You don't need to worry about paying for anything." Lily, who had been quiet up until this point, looked at the man with wide eyes. She had never been to a real restaurant before, and the idea of sitting down at a table to eat felt like something out of a dream. But the man's offer was too kind to refuse. Max glanced at Lily and then at the man. He could see the hope in her eyes, and for the first time in a long time he felt that hope too. "Okay," Max said, a small but genuine smile forming on his face. "We'd like that." The man smiled back and gestured for them to follow him. As they walked down the street together, Max couldn't help but notice how different the world seemed. The street that had once felt cold and indifferent now seemed a little bit warmer. The bustling noise of the city, which used to make him feel lost and invisible, now felt like a backdrop to their conversation, as if the world around them was slowly fading away. When they arrived at the restaurant, it was nothing fancy, just a small diner with a cozy atmosphere. The smell of fresh food filled the air, and for a moment, Max forgot about everything else. It felt like a world away from the street corner they had been living on. It felt like a place where people came to enjoy themselves, to relax, to eat without worrying about survival. They sat down at a booth by the window, and the man ordered for all of them. As they ate, Max and Lily couldn't help but feel a sense of disbelief. It wasn't just the food, it was the entire experience. For so long they had been on their own, and now they were sitting here, sharing a meal with someone who genuinely cared about them. It was hard to grasp, but Max knew one thing for sure: this was a moment he would never forget. As they ate, the man asked them about their lives. He wanted to know about their past, their dreams, what they wanted for their future. Max and Lily were used to talking about their struggles, about how they had to fight for every meal, every moment of safety. But no one had ever asked them what they wanted for their future. No one had ever asked about their dreams. Lily spoke up first, her voice small but full of hope. "I want to go to school," she said. "I want to learn things. I want to have a real job when I grow up. I want to help people just like you." Max smiled at her words. It was exactly what he had hoped for her. He had always wanted her to have a better life, one where she wasn't just surviving but thriving. "I want that too," Max said quietly. "I want to be able to take care of her, to make sure she has everything she needs. I don't want her to end up like this forever." The man listened intently, his eyes soft with understanding. "You both have big dreams," he said, his voice full of encouragement. "And I believe you can make them happen. The road won't be easy, but you're already on the right path. You just have to keep moving forward, and things will get better." Max and Lily exchanged a glance, and for the first time they felt like their dreams were possible. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about believing that they could have a future, that they could have something better than the life they had known on the streets. As they finished their meal, the man smiled at them. "I'll be here for you," he said. "And whenever you need anything, whether it's food, a place to stay, or just someone to talk to, I'll be around. You're not alone in this. Don't forget that." Max and Lily walked away from the diner that day with a renewed sense of hope. It wasn't just the food that had filled them up. It was the kindness, the understanding, the sense that they were seen and valued. They were no longer invisible. As they returned to their corner on the street, they knew that their lives had changed. They had met someone who truly cared, and for the first time they felt like their future was within reach. As the days turned into weeks, Max and Lily's lives began to change in ways they hadn't thought possible. It wasn't just the small acts of kindness from the man that kept them going. It was the sense of something bigger, something more hopeful that began to emerge in their lives. Every morning when they woke up, they no longer felt completely hopeless. There was still a long way to go, but they started to believe that their future might look different. The man kept his word. He didn't just offer food and a kind smile once and disappear. He returned again and again, always checking in, always making sure they were okay. He brought them food, clothes when they needed them, and even helped them find a shelter that was willing to take them in for a few nights. It wasn't much, but it was the beginning of something new. The feeling of having a roof over their heads, of being able to sleep in a warm bed, felt like a dream come true for them. They had never known such comfort, and it made them both incredibly grateful. It was in this new shelter that they began to experience a sense of safety that they hadn't known before. Max and Lily were no longer just living day by day, struggling to survive. They had a place where they could sleep without worrying about being attacked or harassed by strangers. They no longer had to fight for food, and they didn't have to hide their faces from the world anymore. They were no longer invisible. Max started to feel a sense of relief that he hadn't felt in years. The constant weight of worry about where they would sleep, what they would eat, and whether or not they would make it through the night was finally starting to lift. For the first time in a long time, he was able to breathe. He began to think about things he had long forgotten, the possibility of going back to school, the idea of having a job, and the hope of someday being able to take care of Lily properly. He began to dream again. Lily, too, was slowly beginning to believe in the possibility of a better future. She had always wanted to go to school, but she hadn't even dared to imagine it until now. She had been so focused on survival that she had never thought about what came after that. But now, with a safe place to sleep and food in her stomach, she could finally think beyond the present. She wanted to learn, to read books, to discover new things. She wanted to be like other kids she saw in the park, running around with their backpacks and lunchboxes, laughing and playing without a care in the world. One afternoon, after school had let out for the day, the man came by the shelter to check on them. He had been busy with work but always made time to visit. As usual, Max and Lily greeted him with a smile, their faces lighting up at the sight of him. It had become a familiar and comforting presence in their lives. "How are you two today?" he asked, sitting down on the bench beside them. "We're good," Max said, smiling. "Better than we've been in a long time. It's nice to feel safe for once." The man nodded, his expression softening. "I'm glad to hear that. You both deserve to feel safe, and I'm proud of how far you've come already." Max and Lily exchanged a glance. They weren't used to hearing words of encouragement like that. Most people just saw them as lost causes, too far gone to ever make a real difference in their lives. But the man saw potential in them. He saw that they were capable of more than just surviving, they were capable of thriving. Max felt a swell of pride in his chest. It wasn't easy for him to admit that they had made it this far, but the truth was they had. They had made it because of the kindness of a stranger who believed in them when no one else did. "Have you thought about what comes next?" the man asked. "You've made so much progress already, and I think it's time to start thinking about what you want for your future." Max paused, considering the question. He hadn't thought about it in a while. They had spent so long just trying to survive that thinking about the future seemed like something distant, something that didn't belong to people like them. But now, with a roof over their heads and a chance to build something better, the future didn't seem so out of reach. "I want to go to school," Lily said quietly, looking up at the man. "I want to learn. I want to do something with my life. I don't want to just be stuck." Max felt a surge of hope hearing her speak like that. He had always wanted Lily to have more than he could offer, and now she was dreaming of something better. "And I want to take care of her," Max added. "I want to make sure she doesn't have to go through what we've gone through. I want to get a job, maybe get into school myself. I want us to have a chance." The man smiled warmly at them. "You both have big dreams, but I think you're both capable of making them come true. The road won't always be easy, but I believe in you, and you're not alone. You have people who care about you, people who want to help you succeed." Max looked at Lily and then back at the man. For the first time, he felt like they might actually be able to do it. He could see a path ahead of them, a path that didn't just lead to survival but to something more, something better. As the weeks passed, they continued to take small steps forward. The man helped them find a local community center where they could get tutoring, and he helped them enroll in school. It wasn't a perfect situation, but it was a start. They began to learn again, to feel the excitement of knowledge, to see that they had the potential to do more than just exist. Lily, with her love of drawing and art, began to take art classes at the community center. She loved it. For the first time in ages, she felt like she was doing something that made her happy, something that felt right. Max, on the other hand, began taking basic math and literacy courses. He had always been good with his hands, but now he wanted to learn the skills he needed to find work and build a future for himself and Lily. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were building a life. One afternoon after school, the man came to see them again. This time he had a small package in his hands. "I've been working on something for you too," he said with a grin. Max and Lily exchanged curious glances as the man handed them the package. Inside, they found a set of notebooks, pens, and other school supplies. It wasn't much, but it was everything they needed to start writing down their thoughts, their goals, and their dreams. "I know it's not much," the man said, "but I thought you could use these for your classes. You're both going to do great things, I just know it." Max felt a lump in his throat as he took the supplies. It wasn't just the notebooks, it was the belief behind them, the idea that someone believed in him and Lily enough to invest in their future. It meant more to him than he could put into words. "Thank you," Max said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything." The man smiled, his eyes full of pride. "It's just the beginning," he said softly, "and I'll be here every step of the way." As Max and Lily sat down with their new notebooks, ready to write down their dreams and plans, they realized that their lives had changed forever. They were no longer invisible. They were no longer just two homeless kids on the streets. They were children with dreams, with hope, and with the chance to build a better future. And as they looked at each other, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. They had the strength, the support, and the love to make their dreams come true. Months passed, and the changes in Max and Lily's lives were nothing short of remarkable. What had started as a small act of kindness, a simple meal offered by a stranger, had grown into a new chapter in their lives, a chapter filled with hope, opportunity, and a future they had once thought impossible. Max was no longer just a boy who had to fight for survival. He was learning again, studying hard at school, and beginning to understand that education was a key to unlocking the future he had always dreamed of for Lily. The tutoring sessions at the community center became a place of excitement, where every lesson felt like a small victory. He wasn't just learning to read and write, he was learning to believe in himself. He was learning that he could be more than the circumstances he had grown up in. Lily, too, had blossomed in ways Max never expected. Her love for drawing, which had once been just a way to pass the time on the streets, became a true passion. She enrolled in art classes at the local community center, and her talent began to shine. Her drawings, once simple sketches of the world around her, transformed into vibrant images of hope and possibility. The teacher noticed her talent and encouraged her to keep working, to nurture her gift. For the first time, Lily believed that her dreams of becoming an artist were within reach. But it wasn't just the schoolwork that had transformed them. It was the people who had come into their lives. The man who had first offered them food and a listening ear had become more than just a stranger who helped them out. He had become their mentor, their guide, and their friend. He was there for them, not just with words of encouragement, but with actions that showed them they were valued. Every time Max and Lily had doubts, he was there to remind them of their potential. Every time they stumbled, he helped them back on their feet. And every time they took a step forward, he was there to cheer them on. Max had never known what it felt like to have someone believe in him. He had always been the protector, the one who had to be strong for Lily. But now, for the first time, he was learning to believe in himself, too. He could feel the weight of the past slowly lifting. The idea that he could have a future, a real future, was no longer a distant dream. It was something tangible, something he could reach out and touch. And as he sat at his desk at night, doing his homework, he couldn't help but think about how far they had come. There were still hard days, days when Max and Lily felt the weight of the world on their shoulders. Sometimes the old fears crept in, the fear of going back to the streets, the fear of losing everything they had worked so hard for. But those days were becoming fewer. With every new lesson, every new step they took toward their future, the past seemed less powerful. They were learning to take control of their lives, to shape their own destiny. One afternoon after school, the man came by to visit them once again. Max and Lily had grown so used to seeing him by now that his visits felt like a familiar comfort, something they looked forward to. He had become like family to them, someone who was always there when they needed him. "How's everything going?" he asked as he sat down with them on the bench outside their shelter. Max looked at him and smiled. "It's going really well. We've been working hard in school. I'm finally starting to get the hang of things. And Lily, well, she's been drawing like crazy." "She's amazing." Lily blushed at the compliment, her face lighting up with a shy smile. "I just love it," she said softly. "I never thought I could do something like this, but now I believe I can." The man smiled, his eyes proud. "I knew you two had it in you. You've come so far and you're both doing great. I'm proud of you, really proud." Max felt his chest swell with pride. The words meant so much coming from him. He had never heard someone say they were proud of him before, and hearing it now made him realize just how far he had come. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving. It was about turning the page to a new chapter, one filled with possibilities. "I've been thinking," the man said after a pause. "You two are ready for the next step. I know things haven't been easy, but I think you've got everything you need to make your dreams come true. You've worked hard, you've stayed focused, and now it's time to take that next step into the world." Max and Lily exchanged a glance. The world had always felt so big, so out of reach. But now, with the support of this man, they felt like they could handle whatever came their way. "What do you mean?" Max asked, his voice full of curiosity. "I think it's time for you both to start thinking about your futures more seriously," the man said, his tone thoughtful. "Maybe you should look into some part-time jobs, find ways to support yourselves a little more. You can start building your independence, taking control of your own path, and I'll be here to guide you every step of the way." The idea of working, of having a job and earning money was both exciting and overwhelming. Max had never had a job before. He had always been too focused on survival. But now, it felt like a new opportunity, a chance to create the life they had always wanted. He looked at Lily, who was staring at him with wide eyes, and he knew she was feeling the same mix of excitement and nervousness. "I think we're ready," Max said, his voice steady. "I think we can do this. We'll take it one step at a time, but we'll do it." The man smiled warmly. "I have no doubt you will. You two are stronger than you know, and with the right mindset, you can accomplish anything." As the days turned into weeks, Max and Lily began to take the next steps toward independence. They started looking for part-time work, and with the help of the community center, they found opportunities that allowed them to earn some money. Max began helping with odd jobs around the shelter, fixing things that needed repair, while Lily started offering art classes to younger children at the community center. It wasn't much at first, but it was a start. They were no longer just relying on the kindness of others. They were contributing, becoming a part of something bigger. Through it all, the man continued to support them, offering advice, encouragement, and a helping hand when they needed it. But he also gave them space to grow, to learn how to navigate the world on their own. It wasn't always easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but Max and Lily had learned to face those challenges with confidence, knowing that they had the tools to overcome them. One day, after a particularly busy week, the man came by to check on them. Max and Lily had just finished their work for the day, and they were sitting together, enjoying a rare moment of relaxation. "You two are doing amazing," the man said, sitting down beside them. "I can see the changes in you. You're no longer just surviving, you're living. You're creating the life you deserve." Max smiled, his heart full. "It's all because of you," he said. "You showed us that there's more to life than just getting by. You showed us that we can dream, that we can build something better." The man shook his head, his smile kind. "You did it all yourself. I just gave you a little nudge in the right direction. You're the ones who did the hard work, and I'm proud of you both." Max and Lily looked at each other, their eyes shining with pride. They had come so far, and they knew this was only the beginning. They weren't just two homeless kids anymore. They were young people with dreams, with hope, and with a future full of possibilities. And as they walked down the street together, ready to face whatever came next, they knew that no matter where life took them, they would always have the strength to keep going. They had each other, they had their dreams, and most importantly, they had the belief that they could make their future whatever they wanted it to be.